Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Erin Spain, and today I'm going to be sharing a tutorial for this easy DIY scrap wood storage cart. Now, this isn't the most glamorous project I've ever shared, but it's utilitarian. It was much needed in my workshop, so I'm happy to have it done. I do want to mention before we get started, I challenged myself to build this entirely out of materials that I already had on hand. You could use 3/4 inch plywood for the whole thing, which is probably what I would have done if I had enough on hand, but I didn't, so I had to improvise. So I'll be talking more about that throughout the video. Big thank you to Craig for sponsoring this video. You'll be hearing more about them as well. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and click the bell, and let's get started.
As I mentioned, for this project, I really wanted to challenge myself to only use materials that I had on hand. Since I didn't have enough 3/4 inch thick plywood on hand to use for the entire cart, I used a combination of 3/4 inch thick plywood, a 3/4 inch thick project panel, as well as 1/4 inch thick plywood for the front and a few scraps of 1x2. Even though this was sanded plywood, I did give it another good sanding with my random orbit sander. Since I'm using pocket holes for the majority of the cart, I inserted the drill bit that came with my Craig jig, and then I used my Craig Jig 520 Pro to drill pocket holes in my large sheet of plywood. I drilled several pocket holes along this side, which will eventually be the bottom of this piece, spacing them out about 4 to 5 inches or so. I absolutely love the portability of this Craig jig. It is quickly becoming my favorite. As you can see, I can easily move it around my workshop. I can use it on the ground, I can use it on my workbench, and it's just really convenient. I will link to this in the description box below, as well as all of the supplies that I used for this project. And you can find the entire step-by-step written tutorial with build plans over on the Craig website, which I will also link for you. Next, I swapped out my drill bit with the driver bit that came with my Craig jig. Right now we're working with the cart laying on its back, so the piece I'm attaching right now is going to be the bottom eventually when we flip it upright. I wanted the bottom to be a little wider than a 1x12 board, so I used a project panel that I had left over from another project, and it's about 15.5 inches wide. If I'd had enough 3/4 inch thick plywood, I would have just used that for the whole cart like I mentioned earlier, so you can certainly do that instead. I was just improvising here and trying to use whatever I had on hand. So I attached this piece using 1¼ inch pocket hole screws. I was sort of designing this and figuring it out as I went along, but in hindsight, I should have also drilled pocket holes along the sides of my bottom piece, as well as the sides of my large plywood piece, which will be the back of the cart, before assembling it. But the great thing about this pocket hole jig is that it's portable and easy to use regardless of the angle, so I could easily attach it even when the pieces were positioned this way and drill my holes. So I drilled 3 holes along each end of my bottom piece and then 3 holes along the sides of what will eventually be my back piece. And I didn't drill them all the way up to the top of the plywood, I just did it from the bottom to about halfway up because the front and side pieces aren't going to be as tall as this back piece. I just slid a scrap piece of wood underneath my plywood to prop it up off the ground a little bit so that I could wedge my Craig jig under it and drill more pocket holes. You can make your side pieces as long as you want. These are about 2 feet long each. Since I didn't have enough 3/4 inch thick plywood, I used 1/4 inch thick plywood for the front. It's pretty flimsy, which is okay since this isn't going to bear any weight, but it also wasn't wide enough to drill directly into the sides. So I needed to add some scrap pieces of 1x2 board around the perimeter so I would have something to attach the front panel to. I just added pieces to each bottom corner as well as the area where the top of the front panel would be, and then one in the middle of the bottom, making sure to leave a 1/4 inch gap between the 1x2 and the edge so that the front plywood piece would lay flush with the sides when attached. I attached the scrap 1x2 pieces as well as the front plywood piece using 1-inch wood screws. Luckily, I had some casters left over from another project that I just never ended up using, so I attached these using 1/2-inch screws. I am so excited to have this done, you guys. I have been using this Rubbermaid garbage can for my scrap wood for way too long, so it's so nice to be able to roll it around and also to not be using a garbage can anymore. And now for the outtakes.
Now I gotta sneeze. Excuse me. Oh my gosh. Okay. Oh gosh. Thanks so much. Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Erin. Thanks so much for watching. If you haven't already,
Thanks so much for watching. You can find me online at ErinSpain.com and on social media at ErinSpainBlog. In the meantime, please check out some of my other videos. Thanks!